The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 144. The Wolverines move to number 1 in men's basketball for now. Coach Brady Hoke hauls in another big-time recruit, and Michigan hockey woes continue. That and more coming up on today's show. This is the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. The Wolverines moved up to number 1 in this week's poll, but we all know that doesn't mean much in January and February. As Coach Beeline said on Monday, do you remember who was number 1 last January 28th? So let's enjoy the ride while we can. It's been a great season so far. This week we're home against Northwestern, then down to Bloomington on Sunday to face the Hoosiers in what should be an electric atmosphere. And as if that wasn't enough of a test, then it's on to East Lansing and a date with a rapidly improving Spartan team, and then back to seek revenge against the Buckeyes next Sunday. I think we're in for a nail-biter of a month of basketball in February, so let's enjoy it. National Signing Day is next Wednesday, February 6th, and unless things change, Michigan's recruiting class will rank among the nation's best when the ink dries on those letters of intent next week. This past Saturday, Coach Hoke landed that big-time running back that we know this team needs. 5-star tailback Derek Green from Hermitage High School in Richmond, Virginia. Let it be known to all that he is headed to Ann Arbor this fall. Just about every recruiting service on the board has Derek rated as the number 1 senior running back in the country, and we sure hope so. The next few weeks we'll be doing our recruiting breakdown shows, so don't forget to join us for more on this great class. Coach Barnes-Arico and the ladies have delighted us with the best start in program history this year. They fell to a good Iowa team on Sunday at Chrysler, but are still in the thick of the Big Ten race. This week they're on the road tomorrow night to take on Minnesota, and then back to take on the Spartans over the weekend. If there has been a bummer this season, it's been Michigan hockey. We had high expectations for this team when the season got underway in October, but injuries, youth, and shakier than expected goaltending have led to some disappointing results. This week we try and figure out what's wrong with this team, and can Coach Red Berenson get things straightened out in time to make a run at another NCAA appearance? It seems unlikely, but you never know. Matt Slovin, managing editor at the Michigan Daily, and the guy who covers Michigan hockey for them, has some interesting thoughts on this year's team and what's gone wrong. He joins me next on Michigan Gameday, here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. We all know what kind of a season it's been for Michigan hockey. It has been very tough so far this year, maybe even unexpected. Here today to talk Michigan hockey with us is Matt Slovin from the Michigan Daily. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here. I do wish we were talking about something a bit more pleasant than this season for Michigan, which Red Berenson actually described as a train wreck last week, and I do feel that that is an apt description of what's been happening so far.
Well, I think you're probably right, and Michigan fans feel the same way. This weekend, it was a trip over to Kalamazoo to face a pretty darn good Western Michigan team. They were ranked number 9 in the country, but the downward spiral continued, didn't it, Matt?
It did. Actually, I think the sweep might be a little misleading. Friday night, I thought, was a step forward for this team. I thought they played hard, especially in the first period. Came out and grabbed a 2-goal lead pretty much right away and with a lot of scoring chances. But both nights, just a big collapse as the game wore on. Second period was was a dagger in both, giving up a lot of soft goals. As you know, the goaltending's been an issue all season. But after that first intermission, the team just couldn't string together 60 minutes of hockey, which is a big part of what Berenson thought has been the issue with them all season. So a very good Western Michigan team that beat them twice this weekend, but still, it's very late in the season, and coming away with 0 points is not what Michigan wanted to do.
No, and as you mentioned, it is late in the season, and the goaltending situation has just been chaos all season. Any clue to you if Red is looking to bring in another top-flight goaltender next season? And if he does that, who do you see being the odd man out?
It's a little late for next season. I think they are looking at for 2014-15. But for next season, it might be a little late. And for this season, I think Michigan fans were hoping very, very badly that one would step up and maybe take the reign as the top man. But unfortunately, that hasn't happened. I thought a lot of people thought it would be Adam Janicic, especially after he shut out Western Michigan at Yost a couple months ago. But he has struggled recently, especially this weekend, as I mentioned, giving up a lot of soft goals, including one very bad tip-in front of the net that it looked like he had a beat on, and it wasn't even a very, very fast tip-in. So in order for this team to make the NCAA tournament, obviously they're going to have to pull off a run like they did in 09-10 with Sean Hunwick in goal. And to make that kind of run, you need a goalie like that to sort of propel the team. But it's clear now that none of the three goalies that Michigan has used this season is going to be the answer, and I don't think any of them are going to get hot for the conference tournament.
Well, Matt, at this point, do you think with those three goaltenders, is it a talent question or is it more mental at this point of the season?
I think it's got to be both. I think the mental thing for the freshmen is huge, especially for Jared Rutledge, who actually got into the game Saturday night in Kalamazoo. He played some of the third period, and he didn't even face a shot on goal. But I think he needs to get his confidence back because he was, of course, expected to be the starter going into the season. Berenson said all last year that Rutledge was going to be the starter, but he got shelled in a couple of early games, especially one at Munn and East Lansing. He gave up 7 goals, and so he really did not get the job done. But I think if they started easing him back into it, I think it's huge to get his confidence going before next season, if maybe he's going to be a candidate for the starting job. And from all accounts, he was a talented goalie. He played with the United States national team program in Ann Arbor, and he was talented. He put up some good numbers, but this season there hasn't been evidence of that whatsoever. So I think if he is going to be the guy somewhere down the road, they need to get his confidence going as soon as possible.
Well, Matt, why do you think it took this team so long to play with a kind of sense of urgency that I think we've seen the last 2 weekends? Until then, you didn't get that feeling. Am I right or wrong on that?
I think you're definitely right on that. And in past seasons, it hasn't been uncommon for this team to start slow like they did. So I don't think anybody was panicking right out of the gate, even with some high national expectations when they didn't start very strong and lost a lot of conference games early. But as 2012 turned into 2013 and there wasn't a turnaround, the Great Lakes Invitational was a disaster, whereas last season they won it. I think that's when people started to panic. And yeah, I think that's when the sense of urgency maybe kicked in for some of the players, and nobody's questioning their determination, their will to win. They all badly want to win, but it's a little late now for that sense of urgency to finally kick in. But they all do clearly want to win, and they've played like it at times. We've seen flashes of very solid hockey out of this team and playoff hockey, and the kind of hockey that it's going to take to make any kind of run in the CCHA tournament. But not enough of it for sustained periods of time.
Well, here we are heading into to February, and to turn it around now would be monumental and historic. But if you had to look back at the season, right up until now, is there a weekend or a game you could say, the wheels came off?
As I mentioned, the Great Lakes Invitational, that loss to Michigan Tech, who really hadn't been having a very good season up to that point, I think was monumental. But also just all the conference losses stacked up, one against another, really does not do this team any favors. I almost compare it to the season that the Detroit Red Wings are having so far, and that many expect them to have. Both of them trying to replace a key player that you really can't replace. And of course, that's Lidstrom for the Red Wings and Sean Hunter for Michigan. And both have had a devastating amount of injuries for Michigan. And Berenson has said that you can't make that as an excuse, but there have been a ton of injuries right now. Junior alternate captain Mac Bennett is out with a lower body injury, a knee injury, and his return is nobody's sure when he's going to return. And like the Red Wings, Michigan's power play has also been very atrocious. I thought their special teams were fine this weekend against Western Michigan. I thought the penalty kill did, for the most part, a good job against a very good Western Michigan power play. But for the entire season, the power play has been terrible. And the Red Wings too so far this season. So no comparisons there.
How much do you think John Merrill's absence impacted that defense? Until they came back.
I think it impacted it quite a bit, especially because the unit really didn't forge any chemistry early in the season because they weren't playing at full strength and they weren't playing without one of their more experienced and definitely one of their most talented defensemen. And I think now just throwing him back into the mix has got to be hard. I mean, he's definitely given the team a boost. But it's got to be hard to it's sort of a patchwork defense, and putting Merrill back there just mid-season has sort of maybe upset the balance, but he's definitely contributed a great deal. But anytime you have a rotating defense like that with players coming in and out of the lineup, of course, Jacob Trouba went to play for the U.S. and Russia at the end of December. Anytime you have a rotating defense like that, it's never a good thing, and it's got to be hard to be on that defense and not know who's going to be healthy, who's going to be back there every night.
Well, you just mentioned Jacob Trouba, and if there's a bright light on this season, Jacob Trouba has got to be one of them. If not, I shouldn't say he's a surprise, but he's played so well this year. Talk about how he's improved and how he has impacted the team since October.
I think everybody has seen him improve, and everybody was very impressed with him when he first came here in October with his play. He's very physical, and I think the one thing that people see that he needs to cut down on are the penalties that he takes. He finds himself in the penalty box far too often, and sometimes last night he took I guess it was a roughing after the whistle penalty for sort of fighting with the player, but he just takes too many penalties, but he's started to cut down a little bit, and he's going to need to when he eventually goes to play at the next level, because far too often those hurt the team a fair amount and can take away from any momentum that the team has even struggled to put together this season.
Our guest in the program today is Matt Slovin from the Michigan Daily, who covers Michigan hockey for the Daily. Matt, when you look at this roster, as you mentioned earlier, the expectations were very high heading into the season, and we would think they should have been. But looking at it now, do you think, is this roster overrated, or is it more that they've just underperformed?
That's a great question, Mike, because honestly, it's unbelievable how many NHL prospects there are on this team compared to some of the teams they've lost to. And you just think that all those NHL scouts, it can't be wrong. I mean, this is still, I think, a very talented roster that is just struggling to put 60 minutes together and play together. But I don't think the talent is necessarily the issue. Compared to some of the teams they've lost to, they should be heads and tails much better. But I think that a lot of the problem could stem from chemistry issues, which is sort of hard to see when you're just watching a game, but it must be hard. It's a young team still, so it's not clear how some of these guys, how their Michigan careers will pan out, but you'd like to think that they will be able to play better together as a unit as the years go by.
Well, you mentioned chemistry and that this is a very young team, which leads me to the question of leadership. Do you see a lack of leadership because there are so many young players on the team this year?
I definitely think there is at least somewhat of a lack of leadership. Berenson has mentioned that Saturday night. He did mention that the leaders on this team, it's always you're as good as your senior class, and this year's senior class has really underperformed. A.J. Trias started the season on an absolute tear as its captain, and since then he hasn't made much noise at all, and he's barely a presence these days on the ice. So if Michigan is going to string together some wins late and maybe increase its standing for the CCHA tournament, he's going to need to reemerge. And he, as the captain, that's definitely the role he needs to play coming up on the final 4 or so weeks of the regular season.
Well, and here we are. It is the final stretch run of the season. And you know what? The kind of a season the team's had this year and that NHL talent that's on this roster, I think you're right. The scouts can't be wrong about all of those guys. That leads me to wonder, who do you think is going to stick around for next year, or how many defections to the NHL are we going to have?
That's a good question. It almost seems like you have to expect 1 or 2 a season the way things are now. But if this team could get a John Merrill back for his senior year, or Trouba back for his sophomore year, even Mac Bennett as a junior, he's a Montreal Canadiens prospect. I think they'd love to have him, even though he's been hurt for the last few weeks. If they could get a couple of those guys back, that would be a big boost for this team going into next season. But honestly, I don't see that much improvement from this year's roster talent-wise coming before next season. I think 2 seasons from now you could see a ton of improvement, but next season they're almost stuck with what they've got in net and defense on up. So you'd hate to see a couple of them leave. That would be a big blow to this team.
Well, you know, it just takes a season like this for fans to start murmuring and rumbling that maybe Red's lost his edge. We know he signed the extended contract. Do you think he's feeling pressure to retire, or even, as some fans are saying, just losing that edge?
Well, a couple weeks ago, the reporters and I asked him if he's still enjoying coaching this team, and he said that he's not. And you can't really blame him there. I don't think he's losing his edge at all, and I think fans that are saying he should be fired or anything like that are crazy, personally, because he's done such a good job with this team, and the kind of success that they've had is really unprecedented. And to have him leave on any terms other than his own, I don't think would be a wise decision by the athletic department. I think he's absolutely earned the right to decide when he's going to leave. I don't want to use the word spoiled, but Michigan fans have become very, very accustomed to the kind of success that Red has had as coach. And for one season, after 22 years of making the NCAA tournament, one season where it looks like that streak's going to come to maybe a thudding end, is not enough for him to retire, or certainly not for any kind of change.
No, I think you're right about that. Well, you won't use the word, but I will. Spoiled after 22 seasons. I mean, come on, look at any of the other athletic programs. Look anywhere around the country. 22 years in the NCAA tournament, national championships, CCHA championships, and there's talent on this roster. There's every reason to believe that next year this could be a very good learning experience. And this team is going to bounce right back. So, you know, that's just silly talk about Coach Red Berenson losing his edge, I think, too.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's completely outrageous. And you know, I definitely see the passion in this team, and I think that the ones that do come back for next season will want to do everything that they can to avoid having a season like this again. And even the rest of the way this season, I don't think it's impossible that this team could get hot and maybe win a few games in the conference tournament. But like I said, to really do that, you really need a hot goaltender to rally around, and this team doesn't have that, and I don't think they're going to have that. So I think they can win a playoff series. It looks like they're going to have to play maybe even 2 on the road, which would certainly be unprecedented under Berenson. But if they do that, I think I could see them winning 1. 2 might be a stretch because they'd have to go on the road to one of the better teams in the conference. So making it to Joe Louis in the Final 4 of the conference in its last year might be a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, and what's sad about that this year is the regionals are so close to home, Grand Rapids and then Toledo. It would just be a real shame if the team can't make that run that we've almost, and I'll use that word, spoiled again. We've seen in the last couple of years just notch it up down the stretch and really turn in great performances in the last month of the season. It would be a shame if they can't do that when everything's so close to home this time.
Right, it definitely would be, especially with, as you mentioned, those 2 locations right down the street almost. And Michigan is actually the host school for the Grand Rapids Regional, even though it's a bit further than the Toledo one. But yeah, it would be unbelievable and very hard for Michigan fans to watch. So definitely maybe extra incentive for the team to try and put together a run in the conference tournament, but that's going to be a tough task, even though this season, there's always parity in the CCHA, but this season especially, I think, you see a team like Alaska, who when they came to Yost a few weeks ago, was tied with Michigan for one of, I believe it was 9th or 10th, somewhere in that range, and Alaska's just vaulted up the standings. They're now tied for 4th. So you see teams like that. Teams like Bowling Green they had a bad weekend last weekend, but they've won some big games recently, beating Michigan, beating Notre Dame much more impressively. So you see teams like that perform, and you wonder if maybe Michigan could catch lightning in a bottle in the conference tournament, but it's doubtful that that's going to happen.
Well, in the last year of the CCHA, Matt, do you think, is it more parity or is it mediocrity this year? And do you think anyone in the league can be competitive in the NCAA tourney coming up?
That's a good question, too. I think, the league, it could be a down year for the league, and it's hard to tell that during conference play, but we'll definitely find out in the NCAA tournament how tough this conference is. But I could see a team like Miami. Miami, they're in second right now. They're actually still my pick to win the league. But, it's going to be an uphill climb for anyone outside of the top maybe 3 teams in the league to win the league, and that's Western, Miami, and Notre Dame. And then in the NCAA tournament, those 3 are the ones that right now are probably looking on the good side of the picture. And I'm not sure if anyone really can expect, with some of the losses that those teams have had, especially Notre Dame to Bowling Green, I don't know if anybody can expect a championship out of the CCHA in its last year.
Well, you've seen this team all season since October, so I'll hit you with the big question for the last one. Do you think there's any reason to believe this team can, turn on the burners and make it to the NCAA tournament for the 23rd consecutive year?
No, I don't see it happening. I've been wrong before, but it would be, in my mind, exponentially more incredible than the run that the team in 2009, 2010 had in order they needed to win the conference tournament as well. And now, Michigan's barely keeping their head above water for last place in the league, and their series with Michigan State this weekend is essentially going to be for who gets to avoid the basement. And when you look at the teams that Michigan and Michigan State have had in the history of both those programs, it's incredible to think about that they're in the last league of the season, in the last year of the season, I should say, that they're playing for not being in last place. So no, I think that right now Michigan, a lot of it is playing for pride, and that the NCAA tournament is completely out of the question. But it would be very exciting if they were to make it to Joe Louis Arena for the Final Four. Anything can basically happen there.
Well, you're right. And as we head down the stretch in February, I think you're right. They're playing for pride and also for some confidence for some of these young players. And as you mentioned at the top of the interview, I think it's crucial, being that there is no one on the horizon, not a big prize coming in as far as a recruit goes to play in the nets. Rutledge, who was an outstanding goaltender for the USA U18 team, he really could use a shot in the arm, and a shot of confidence, couldn't he?
Yeah, he definitely could, and that's why I think Red put him in there last night, maybe, and I think we'll start seeing him more. I don't know if the Janisic experiment is over. I think he played some great games for Michigan. I mentioned that shutout of Western Michigan at Yost, but I think it's clear that he is not the answer in net, and I don't think there is an answer. But like you mentioned, giving Rutledge a chance to build his confidence going into next season by playing out the rest of the season or some of it might not be a bad idea whatsoever, because he's definitely shown that he can play against some pretty good competition. But for whatever reason, he had that eye issue when he first came to Michigan. He's really struggled here, and so much that he really, aside from that Michigan State game, which was back in, I believe, November or maybe early December, he has barely played at all. Last night was actually the second time since then that he's played. The first one was the game against the United States national team, which Michigan, of course, lost.
Well, it's a young team, and through the month of February into March, Coach Red Berenson will be closely watching these guys, because this is a big test to see, maybe an indicator of what we're going to see next year. So it will be an interesting month.
It'll definitely be an interesting March, if not for the reason that Michigan fans thought it would be with competing for a 23rd straight NCAA tournament. But it'll be interesting for several other reasons as they look to maybe finish in a more respectable place in the league than they are.
Couldn't agree with you more. Our guest on the show today talking Michigan hockey has been Matt Slovin, who covers the Wolverines for the Michigan Daily. Matt, it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to having you back on the show soon.
Thanks a bunch, Mike. Anytime.
Stick around for Wolverine Quick Hits. That's next, here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, Michigan freshman Glenn Robinson III was named the Big Ten's Freshman of the Week Monday. It marks the second conference rookie accolade for Robinson this season. Robinson helped U of M continue its best start in school history with wins over Purdue and at Illinois on Sunday. He averaged 12 points, 8 rebounds, and 1.5 assists per game with no turnovers, while shooting 71.4% from the field, 10 for 14, 50%, 2 for 4 from long range, and draining both of his free throws. The Wolverines, again number 1 this week in the polls, will return to Ann Arbor tonight, looking to sweep Northwestern inside Chrysler Center. Tip-off is slated for 6:30 p.m., and the game will be televised on the Big Ten Network. Then it's on to Indiana for a Big Ten showdown with the Hoosiers, and the beginning of a brutal February schedule, but it should be fun. In hockey, the Wolverines entertain Michigan State at Yost on Friday night. The puck drops at 6:35 p.m., and then on Saturday the action shifts to the Joe Louis Arena and a 4:05 p.m. start. The Wolverines are running out of time this season, as we all know, so if they're going to get in NCAA tournament shape, it will have to start this weekend. A career-high 20 points from senior guard Jenny Ryan was not enough as the number 23 ranked University of Michigan women's basketball team was clipped by Iowa 63-57 on Sunday afternoon at Chrysler Center. The Hawkeyes outscored the Wolverines 10-3 over the final 5 minutes in a matchup that included 10 lead changes and 5 ties. 3 other Wolverines scored in double figures, including senior forward Sam Arnold with 12 points and 5 rebounds, senior forward Nia Jordan with 10 points and 7 rebounds, and senior guard Kate Thompson with 10 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 blocks. For the game, Michigan shot 41.5%, 22 of 53 from the floor, while Iowa connected on 46%, 23 of 50 of its shots. Wolverines now 16-4 overall, 5-2 in the Big Ten, and still in the thick of it as far as the Big Ten race goes. The University of Michigan softball team will begin its season ranked number 15 in the country in the USA Today NFCA poll, the same spot U of M finished when play ended last year. The poll was released on Monday, with defending Big Ten champion Michigan the only team from the conference to crack the top 25. The Maize and Blue has 9 games on the slate against preseason top 25 teams: Arizona State, number 4, Oregon, number 5, LSU, number 10, Louisiana Lafayette's at number 11, USF, number 12, Arizona, number 13, Washington, number 16, Texas A&M, number 17, and Louisville, number 18. The Wolverines kick off the 2013 season against Marshall, Florida Atlantic, number 12 USF, and Samford at the University of South Florida tournament coming up next week, February 8th through the 10th in Tampa, Florida. And in baseball news, senior center fielder Patrick Biondi was unanimously voted team captain for the second consecutive year. In the long and storied history of Michigan baseball, only 4 players have ever held the honor of being captain in back-to-back seasons. So congratulations to senior Patrick Biondi. Baseball opens the season down in Sarasota next week, and we'll have more on both baseball and softball coming up as the seasons get underway. Don't forget to become a member here at GBMW. For the latest in Maize and Blue news, go visit www.gbmwolverine.com and sign up for membership. It's a busy time of the year with basketball on the front burner, National Signing Day next week, hockey hoping for a turnaround, and baseball and softball just getting started. If you want to stay in the loop, visit www.gbmwolverine.com today and join us. Thanks to Matt Slovin from the Michigan Daily for being our guest today and talking hockey. We hope to have Matt back in the near future, and with better things to talk about. Next Wednesday is National Signing Day, and the class of 2013 is, we hope, pretty much in the bag. In February, we'll have 2 recruiting shows, first breaking down the offensive commits, and then the next week we'll focus on the defensive commits. So we have a busy February on the books, and we hope you'll join us each Wednesday for the Best in Wolverine podcast coverage. Until then, I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. That's it for another week. Thanks for joining us. And as always, go Blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue.